Hello, everybody.
Hey, Facebook.
Sorry, time kind of blew
Sleep
by
at the
there.
switch a little bit
Yeah,
there.
a little bit. Happy for everyone joining us today.
Hope you all are well and dry.
Yeah, lots of rain this weekend.
3 inches or something?
Is that what it was?
Sure.
Okay, we were saying 3 inches. If you know better, put it in the comments. Hi, Becky. Carolyn. Oh. Hi, Pam.
Hey, Pam. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you, too. Oh, we got to scroll down. I don't know why that is.
What? Yeah, you think it'd just kind of tell us that. Hey, Dawn. Karen. Yeah, there we go.
Been
3
over
inches.
3 inches. Look at you go.
It did it again.
Oh, what?
How come? Yeah. Hi, Sharon.
Mark's,
5.5 inches?
Mark's
Is that true,
with
Becky?
us.
Hey, Mark. Becky, you really had 5.5 inches in the rain gauge? That's a lot.
Sharon joining us from Arkansas. Good to see you again.
Of course, at one point it was about a 30-mile-an-hour wind, so it's probably raining sideways.
Yeah, it was windy Saturday night.
We would Sunday morning would have been interesting because we had significant water in the sanctuary.
Yeah,
You wouldn't want to have been in the front row. Not that that's ever a problem.
Yeah, not that there's a fight over that. Hi, Davises.
Yeah, we're trying to look the part, Mark.
Are we looking the part or trying to, sort of make the content seem...
No, we're going to radio DJ it up. I'm going to grow out a ponytail and get a big scruffy beard.
Okay, well, we're going to need to go offline for a second here, everybody. Confirmed with neighbor across the street. That's good. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to turn on the lights.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Sorry for it's a Monday. We'll blame this on Monday. I'm going to go turn on the lights.
All right. While Michael turns on the lights, I will just say, hope you all are doing well. Well, that didn't take long. You have them wired to a...
Well, here we go, everybody. Do you
Yeah.
like it with the lights or without the lights? That's the question.
Don't those lights change colors? Isn't it about time for purple or red or something?
They do change colors. We
Nice.
should have it like change in
Green?
the background.
Let's go green.
Okay. Next time will be green. Tomorrow will be green. Hi, Keith and Beryl.
Hey, guys.
Today's an exciting day.
It's Josh Beloit's birthday.
Well, that makes it. That's a great day. Actually, happy birthday. Today is a new book.
Oh, yeah. I thought maybe that's where you were headed.
Well, yeah. What did you think? Like it's Taco Day or Taco Monday or what?
That sounds really good.
That's what we're having for supper, actually.
Tacos?
Tacos, homemade tortilla.
Yeah, I
shells.
was going to say, I bet they're not from a taco place.
I did have a
Wait,
conversation.
homemade shells?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
No, it's super
Don't you
simple
think
and
you're
super
a little
yummy.
bit overachieving when you're making the taco shell?
Well, that could be said. Hi there, Joanne, Nancy.
Sorry, we have food talk like every day. But
Becky, that's the lights. You like the lights, or you
Good.
like it without the lights? I'm guessing that's.
And we
with
have
the
a
lights.
number, 20. All right, guys, we are going to go ahead and get started. Transition day, we move from one of Paul's letters to a different author. You may know this, but in terms of the arrangement of the New Testament, Paul's stuff is all grouped together, and then later come the other letters. They're grouped. Paul's letters and the other letters are grouped from longest to shortest, though groups of letters are kept together when they have the same author or the same name. Today we are getting very close to the back of the New Testament. I'm sorry, then I should have mentioned Revelation is stuck at the end because nobody really knew exactly what else to do with it. So we are in 1 John today. And some background, we may get into the text today. We'll try to at least get a little bit of it, but I want to give you a feel for this book. It's a fairly early book. It's accounted for pretty early. As to authorship, though, you may know this, but some books are named for who the early church assumed or concluded may have written them. And so John doesn't actually put his name on this. Historically, this has been lumped together with the Gospel of John and 2nd and 3rd John, which share tons of similarities. This book is, I guess we couldn't call it unique. This book stands out for a few reasons, though, one of which, Michael, is the way that it's written.
Right. So you may not know that this book, hi there, Carrie, good to see you. This book is actually one of the first books that they have beginning readers who are learning to read Koine Greek. If you go to seminary and you're going to learn a little bit about the language, this is one of the first books that they have you read because of its very simple syntax, its structure. It's easy to read, sort of like a nice primer for people who are just getting into the language. And that's not to say, Clint, that these words are not meaningful, or it's not to say that there's not a great amount of depth in this book. We're going to find that there is. But it's just simply in terms of its grammatical structure, this is a letter that was, or a letter that we read that is very simple in its ability to understand the words.
Yeah, it's well written. So you contrast a book like this with, say, a book like Ephesians, where the first 14 verses are one ridiculously long sentence. Paul does that sometimes. This book is well written. It's in the classics. It's the style, the grammar. It's very well done. Clearly somebody who had a command of the knowledge. It shares lots of themes with the Gospel of John, and it seems, if not to come from that author, that's a thing that people have argued about. In fact, they've argued about it by the mid-100s. By 130 or 140, there were people already pushing back on the idea that John, the disciple, wrote this, and that discussion hasn't gone away. However, it does seem to come from a similarly minded community, if not from the author himself. Lots of touch points with the gospel. You'll see some things like light, some things like word. You'll see a theme like love, and those all fit the bigger collection of themes that are important in the gospel. In terms of this letter, it says of itself that it's written by an author who titles himself or herself, probably himself, the elder, probably early church leader of some sort, maybe an overseer of a congregation. We, to be honest, if this isn't John who wrote the gospel, the disciple John, then we effectively have no idea who the author might be.
Right. And one of the reasons that this letter is easy to read, Clint, is how many words get repeated in this. And the fact that these words get repeated is really a reflection of these themes that you're talking about. We're going to find love as a particular theme in 1 John that is repeated over and over and over again. And there's also in this book some sense of a community. Some writers about this community that received this letter suggest that there was some opposition and conflict, maybe even some division happening. And as we get into this letter, we're going to find some very strong language about enemies of Christ, enemies of the community. And I think that it's therefore for that reason that we also see some language about the end times. We begin to see, even chronologically, this book is before Revelation. You start to see the New Testament witness shifting a little bit from community focus to what is coming following the return of Christ, resurrection, all these types of themes.
Yeah, there's some Revelation-like language in this book, and keep in mind, Revelation is another book that's attributed to John, so they do share some themes and some feelings in regard to their style. One thing that makes this, and I doubt that many people listening care much about this, but biblical scholars, New Testament people find it pretty interesting. This is called a letter, but it's really not a letter in any discernible way. It doesn't have a greeting. Right. It doesn't have a conclusion. It's not dedicated really to anyone. 2nd and 3rd John have more of that. They fit the classic scheme of a letter. This one just jumps in, and it doesn't really doesn't give a context. It doesn't really seek to be like a salutation. There's just not any of that in this letter, which is interesting and has left biblical scholars scratching their heads for a long time. It really functions a little bit more like a Christian primer like
Yeah.
almost a discipleship textbook, because you jump in right here. We get to verse 1 and it just starts with the words, "We declare to you." So it's not dear anybody. It's not, "Hey, brothers and sisters." It's just, here we go. And that has led some people to question what the original usage and the original intent of this book might have been. It might have been a curriculum of sorts. It could have been a sermon of sorts, a reflection. There are lots of guesses.
In fact, Clint, John Calvin said that it contains teaching mixed with exhortations. Modern scholars have talked about how the book actually doesn't follow a single arc. In Philippians, you very much could read that book through the single arc of the Christ hymn. But this book, you're going to find more themes that are grouped together that sort of have hinges that turn into them. And actually, I think that's going to be a really interesting fixture then of our Bible study together, is we're going to actually get to travel some differing scriptural landscapes together. And I think that's going to be really engaging.
Yeah, I think John Wesley said it's a compendium, the best compendium for the Christian life. The effect that may have on you is the transitions here are not always smooth.
Yeah, they're sharp.
You may just be in one, we may be in one section and then it just feels like we totally jumped to something else. That's not atypical of this letter. So let's jump in. We probably won't get too far today in terms of the verses with that background in mind, but let's look at verse 1 here. "We declare to you what was from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we have looked at and touched with our hands concerning the word of life." Michael, if we do think about the Gospel of John,
Yep.
we see lots of overlap with a verse like this.
Yeah, I would hesitate for us to get wrapped up in the author question and think like, well, if John didn't write this, who did? This book is clearly conversant with the Gospel of John, regardless of whose pen touched the paper. And Clint, that which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, anyone, if you have not read recently the first chapter of John, do so after this study today, because what you're going to see is that's exactly where the gospel starts. It starts with what we call the cosmic Christ. It's the Christ who existed before time and space. And here, once again, we start from the beginning of all things. And it's amazing, Clint, because this Johannine emphasis upon the spiritual reality of Christ gets combined immediately with the physical reality of seeing with our eyes, having looked at, having our hands touching. So we immediately pair these two things. The one who's from the beginning, who's by definition someone who we didn't see and hear, that's God the Creator. And then you have Jesus Christ, who we have literally seen, who we have literally touched, who we can trust this writer as a witness to Christ. And these two are not separate, they're not divided, they are one.
Yeah, so just a refresher, if it's been a while since you've been in the Gospel of John, that begins with the words, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and we have seen His truth." And that's part. So this idea of word, this idea of beginning, and maybe most importantly, this idea of witness, that we know something, we have seen something, we have touched something concerning the word of life, and therefore we are witnesses. We are witnesses to this truth in Jesus Christ, and our task then becomes to share it, to proclaim it, and to live it out in a faithful way. So there is, you could easily read this one verse and not maybe necessarily think of all the aspects of it, but there's a lot going on here.
And we're already, Clint, within the very first sentence of this book, we're beginning to uncover what is a central theme of the book, and that is what we call the incarnation of Jesus Christ, that God taking flesh, that what Jesus represents isn't just good teaching or moral exemplar. Jesus is the living intertwining of humanity and God's presence, and that is going to become a significant theme that finds its way throughout this book. So, as you said, about how we often expect in letters in the New Testament for there to be a greeting, for the writer to address the church and to say, grace and peace be with you. I wish I could be with you. Here, we literally just jump into the deep end of what this author is going to want to lead us into.
Yeah, and again, characteristic of this family of writings that we put under the heading of John's name, very much like the gospel, the idea of witness, the idea of testify,
Right.
the idea of see and hear. This small library within the bigger library of the New Testament is very much populated with those kind of themes, those ideas, and this letter, wherever it came from, it is clearly in that family and jumps right in there. So I think the takeaway here is that this is setting us up, right? We've seen something, we've heard something, we've touched something concerning the word of life. Now, what is that? What do we know about this word of life? And that's where we're going to go next, and we'll get there tomorrow.
Yeah, and probably, I'll be really succinct here, but that word, if you don't have a Bible in front of you, it's capitalized. It's a capital W word. And John does this in the gospel as well. And we need to understand that there's a sense in ancient philosophical thought, there's this idea of the word being the way that the wisdom of the universe, might be another way to say it, that there's this higher order of reality. And when this gets used in its ancient context, in other words, the people who originally received this letter, that would have triggered for them something that was in their common vocabulary, and it may not be in ours. So when we talk about having seen and heard this is actually pushing against things that they assumed. In other words, no one assumed that you could physically see a person who embodied the wisdom of the universe, right? That was thought of as an idea of something outside of our objective reality. So already this author is not only naming something that people could have related to, Clint, but he's actually reframing it in a way that they could not have understood.
Yeah, probably more obvious in the gospel where word is used interchangeably with Jesus. In other words, John in the gospel says, in the beginning was the word, and that's a capital W. That's a title. It doesn't mean a word. It means the word, the Christ, the incarnation of what God wants to say. And that's the idea here concerning the word of life. That doesn't simply mean a message. It means the message,
yes,
the truth. And so that's a good thing to be aware of as we move into the book. So stop there for a minute. If there are comments, questions, by all means, drop those in the comments, and we'll do our best to respond to them. Otherwise, thank you for starting this book with us, and we will continue. Some of this book is very devotional. I promise you're going to love it. You're going to feel challenged and encouraged and comforted by it. Some of it is strange. You're going to feel confused by it. Some of it is very convicting. You're going to feel a little bit, probably a little squeezed by it. But that's the mark of a good book, right? Is that it offers us that variety of experience. I think you all will enjoy this book. There's a lot here, and just some great stuff. I use a pink highlighter, and I've got lots of pink written up in this book.
And if you're an A student type, an overachiever, and you really want to jump into this study with us, of course, feel free to jump back in the podcast. You'll find it on the website, and I could even put it in the comment here. But the podcast we did on John back in the 90-Day New Testament would really give you some background to some of the themes. I think that was a 50-minute conversation or whatever. They would give you some background to the themes we are going to find also in this book.
Yeah. Or the intro to this book would perhaps circle back to that too. Thanks, Marge. Hi, Jeremy. So again, thank you for being with us. Not seeing any questions.